Crazy Stupid Podcast. This is your first time watching and listening to us. You should subscribe on YouTube, follow us on TikTok.
Yeah. And if you are a follower or subscriber, we'd love for you to hit that notification button so that you are always aware of when we are posting something.
All right, but there's a few things we wanted to discuss.
Family.
Yeah, we just saw Fast X, I guess is what we're calling it.
Yeah.
Part 1 of 3. Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
It's actually insane. I can't think of any franchise that's done 3 parts for the finale. Obviously, Harry Potter and Hunger Games did 2 parts.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. They did do 2.
But 3 parts is really crazy, especially when the first part is over 2 hours. I just think we could have condensed this a little bit.
That's a whole TV show worth of content. That's 2.5, another 2.5. That's 5 with another 2.5. 7.5 hours. That's more than a Disney Plus show.
It is.
Which is not a good thing, but Fast X. What a fucking ride.
Everything that you expect from a Fast and Furious movie, it is.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? Okay, so I got a couple of things to say about just the novelty of it all. One, if you're angry at the Fast and Furious movies, knowing who they are and staying committed to it, that's on you. That's on you. You can't go into a Fast and Furious movie being mad that they do what Fast and Furious movies do.
Yes, and the question is, when exactly did this become what Fast and Furious movies do? Because we need to remind ourselves that, at the beginning of this franchise, it was a bunch of people in like essentially a gang type thing.
Maybe even like
stealing
the first 3
DVD
movies.
Players.
Yeah, and then it just escalated. It escalated.
So the first movies were pretty, they were still kind of ridiculous, but they weren't that far removed from reality.
No, I don't think they were ridiculous at all. That first one borderline gives like the sort of indie vibe of like, it's a very specific kind of story they're telling of like the love of like racing. We hadn't really seen anything like that prior to it. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's just, it's almost kind of weird to like, how do you critique the film because they are so self-aware?
Yeah, they're just like, we just do whatever we want. No, man. I just love how much is just unexplained. Just how much is just, there's no answers and it doesn't even matter. Who was the agency? We don't know.
I think we have some idea, but they're not like fully fleshed out.
No,
you know what I mean?
Why didn't you guys just pick the CIA? Why did you make up this other thing?
Or like the random fight scenes that just kind of like, I feel like you could have had a conversation before the fighting actually started. You know? Like, let's just talk.
I remember in the one with Charlize Theron that we went to see, we were literally like an hour and a half into the movie, and I was like, what exactly are the stakes? So I was legit like, what exactly is it that she is trying to do that we're trying to stop? Yeah. Like, it was just sort of vaguely like, they're saving the world. And I was like, okay, but like, from what exactly? Like, it's very unclear here what she's actually doing.
Yeah.
I think that was the one where they introduced like the God's Eye or whatever. And it was just kind of like, okay. But hey, we're just going along for the ride. We're gonna have a good time.
You just turn your logics off and then just enjoy yourself, and
then turn it back on every once in a while to laugh.
Yes. Well, you have to.
Yes.
You have to turn your logic back on when you're watching the movies, because that's also where the humor is.
Yes.
You're like, yeah, I'm gonna let them bend the rules of logic, but then when they do something so absurd, you have to laugh at the absurdity. Like, that's how you enjoy these movies.
Yes, it's the only way.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy Jason Momoa.
Oh, there's a lot that I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, I thought he did a great job. I seemed like you could tell he's having a good time.
It felt like he was kind of making fun of like just the masculinity within Fast and Furious in general. Just the way that he sort of carried himself, his mannerisms, his body language, all of that almost feels like a complete antithesis to all of the other villains that we had gotten prior to, like with movies, The Rock. Like, there's really nothing femme about him in general.
Dripping machismo. ooze.
Yeah, and this felt like we're going to kind of make fun of that a little bit.
I honestly didn't even think of that, but I think you are definitely right now in hindsight.
Yeah.
I do have some questions now. I know that we've been talking about Vin Diesel's ethnic background online, but that guy's mixed. Okay, he's black and white. We know that. He made a video about it. Okay, the real question is, what is the race and ethnicity of Dominic Toretto? That is what needs to be explained.
Is he not Puerto Rican?
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
John Cena, is he like adopted? Because he don't look anything
that's
remotely.
That's the thing. Like, what is your racial identity? So that your grandmother is Rita Moreno. Mm-hmm. Your father is that random man, but who was like clearly brown of some sort. And I thought he was like Italian. In the last movie, I was like, oh, they're one of those like brown Italian families. But then they introduced Rita Moreno, and I'm like, okay. But then John Cena is your brother, so like, what's going on here?
A melting pot of a family.
Like,
that's what they are.
Was John Cena his half brother? Did they say that? Like,
I might have missed it, but I don't remember. I don't remember. Yeah, there's a lot there, but and also the sister. We kind of forget about her. I feel like they don't know what to do with her character. She can't have too much screen time
because of Paul Walker,
right? But she's such an integral part to the story, and I would feel kind of bad if they're like, no, we're just gonna do her out. So I do appreciate Vin Diesel finding ways to keep her in the story, because what happened was so unfortunate, you know. And it sucks when you have like a romantic couple, and one of them is no longer on the show. Yeah. The first thing that I thought of was with One Tree Hill. I think Chad Michael Murray wanted more money, and the CW was like, we're not going to do that. And so if he's like, all right, well, I'm out. And then if he leaves, what exactly is Hillary Burton going to... Right? And from what I remembered, I could be wrong, but it didn't sound like she ever wanted to leave the show, but you have to now because he's gone. Yeah, you know. Also,
Chad Michael Murray, what a way to fumble your bag, man. I know you were like the it boy at the time, but your career quickly took a downturn after that decision.
Yeah, that was not a good look.
Oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, I guess the only thing that they really could have done in the movies, besides what they're doing now, is have Paul Walker's character be dead in the franchise too.
Is that what they did?
No.
Where is he?
He's alive. They're like, it's like, remember in the last movie that they did without him, or where I think they couldn't finish it. He didn't get to finish filming, so they had his brother step in. They did a deep fake. And he like kind of does his farewell, and then him, honestly, I bawled. I cried real tears. And that's where we got that song, It's Been a Long Time. Okay, so they have that song playing, and him and Dominic Toretto are like in their cars like driving, and they do like a little race, and then they drive separate ways, and it's implied that like him and Dom's sister and their kid just are off like living somewhere peacefully. Gotcha. Like you kind of see them from afar on a beach, and then they show all the other characters watching them crying. It was actually extremely sad. Yeah, it was really sad.
That song was a huge hit too.
Yeah. So yeah, he's alive in the franchise. They're just off, like they're not a part of this world anymore, and they just are like living their regular family life.
Yeah. I was thinking about, we kind of touched on this a little bit. But I guess there's two things, just the overall idea of the movie. I'm just gonna go out and say it. It's okay to like the Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah.
It is very much okay. Because I feel like there's two conversations that I think sort of happen. The first is how like blockbusters are sort of taking over, sort of monopolizing the theater experience. And there's room for criticism there. The other one is just the flat out gatekeeping that I see a lot of like film bros kind of make about what movies are acceptable in quote unquote cinema and the ones that are not. And I feel like one, that comes off like super elitist, right, on the one hand, and two, it's like we're trying to quantify the quality of a film, but that's just not how art works in general. Yeah. In my mind.
These aren't trying to be like cinematic greatness. Yeah. They're just trying to be fun, and they are succeeding.
And there is room for both in the in the film world. You can have your Martin Scorsese's and your Christopher Nolan's and your A24's, and then you can also say, maybe I just need a break from the burden of life and then just turn my brain off and enjoy myself.
And you can
for about 2 hours.
That's definitely true, because these films have actors and actresses in them that do other types of films.
Right. Brie Larson.
Right. Charlize Theron. Mm-hmm. Like, they do things that are considered like art.
And you can see they're having such a fun
sometimes
time.
You just want to have fun. That's goofy.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense, and you're going to make a ton of money. So
like, just breathe, guys. It's okay. It's okay. And for people out there, I'm letting you know, I had a blast. So if that means we've lost our film cred, I don't care.
You enjoy these movies the same way you enjoy a Tyler Perry movie.
Yeah. Yes.
You just accept the absurdity and you just go along for the ride, and you are part of the fun is seeing how much crazier is it going to get this time. How are you going to top what you did last
time?
Bro,
they went to space in the last movie.
In a car. They went to space in a car. Not in a spaceship, but a car.
Oh my God. The second thing, and we talked a little bit about this, I think outside of like before the movie came, of just the overall vibe of like these movies. And as I'm watching, it really does feel like the Fast and the Furious franchise is an ode to the 2000s era of just culture in general, specifically pop culture in America. And as I'm watching this film, I'm noticing a couple of like subtle hints and some clear ones, right? So first and foremost, obviously, you have people in like the 2000s. You think about Ludacris, he's a huge deal in the rap genre in the early 2000s, right? They start that feel off of like, we're going to have a 2000s rapper present, and the significance that sort of plays and just sort of setting the tone of the overall film. But then there's like some other little Easter eggs that I noticed. I'm like, okay, you're clearly kind of winking at it. Some of like the cheesy one-liners definitely gives off like 2000 vibes to me. The action scenes, I mean, we were getting tons of action movies that were filled with comedy in the 2000s as well. But then there are some other things, like when they walked into Pete Davidson's store, in the background, you heard, "You've got mail," right? AOL, everyone knows what that is if you grew up in the 2000s. The phone that Jason Momoa had was those, like, I think it was like one of those, what was it called? But it's like you slid it up, like one of those Nokia ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that came out in the 2000s.
I did not notice that.
And it was such a big deal when it came out back then. And then when Vin Diesel shows up to his like house, the one that we said looked like a museum, he had one of those phones that you like pick up. Those don't exist anymore. Like, you don't ever see that. Yeah. Like, the choice of music sometimes they have in the background, particularly in the race scenes, is straight up 2000s vibes 100%. And so like there's a lot of us that were born in the 90s, but we kind of grew up in the early 2000s for the most part. And that was when I'm like, yeah, it feels like I'm a kid again watching this thing. So I always appreciated that. Yeah. But I think those are the two main ones that popped into my head. I don't think I can think of anything else.
The only thing I have to say is what I was telling you outside the theater, which is that they are slowly but surely adding in every single big buff man in Hollywood into these films. And so they have two more to hit, and that's Henry Cavill and Dave Bautista. And after that, I think it'll be complete. You've got The Rock, you've got Vin Diesel, you've got Jason Statham, you've got John Cena, and you have the guy that plays Jack Reacher.
Jack Reacher. What's his name? Let me pull up his name right now.
So, you're almost there.
Oh, it's not. I don't think it's. Oh, it's just Reacher. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the character's Jack Reacher.
You're right.
Yeah.
Because Tom Cruise also came out with a movie about it, but this is a TV show that's not really separate. And that actor's name is Alan Ritchson.
All right. Well, Alan Richardson.
Yeah.
So you're almost done. You're almost there. Just get a couple more.
I mean, and they had Jason Momoa in it.
Oh yes,
too.
Jason Momoa. Yes, that was when they added Jason Momoa. I was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense because it's like he was missing from this. Like when you think of like the strongest men in Hollywood, like these are the people that come to mind.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, there's not that much to say.
It's a Fast and Furious movie.
Yeah, you're
like,
not gonna like walk out with like a exegete and everything, have thesis statements.
No.
You're just having a good time.
You'll just chuckle.
Yeah, and I mean, I laughed a number of times.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool.
All right, here are my 5 underrated TV shows. Okay, so they're not really in any order, but one of them is definitely Yellow Jackets. I just don't think enough people are watching it. Enough people are talking about it, paying attention to it. If there were, there'd be way more conversation.
It's so good.
It's so good. So good.
Yeah.
Severance is on here. I feel like a lot of people did watch it, but I just don't think it got the conversation that it deserved because everybody didn't watch it at the same time. And so like we didn't really get to discuss it as a culture like we do with other shows like Last of Us and whatnot.
Was it a weekly release?
It was.
Oh yeah. What?
But people were not tuned in all at the same time because it's Apple TVs and their shows just kind of, I don't know.
And I think it was one of those that was like a word of mouth kind of thing because I had heard about it, but I didn't watch it until you vouched for it, and then I was like, okay, I clearly need to give this a chance.
It's extremely good, and I just think if we had had the chance to all watch it at the same time, which maybe we will when it comes out again, although they're stopping production because of the strike.
Yeah.
But yeah. My next one is Shrinking, another Apple TV Plus show. It's just so good. It's so wholesome. It's just a show that's about community. Like it depicts people that are living in real community. Like it's not just about a family. It's about like a group of people that like deeply care for each other and are deeply invested in each other's lives. And it's not about them. The drama is not like the infighting or anything like that. It's about like how do these people continue to learn how to be a better community for each other. And it's just so good. I don't really think we have anything on TV that explores that concept at all.
Yeah.
Arcane, it's one of the best animated shows to ever happen, and I don't think enough people have talked about it.
No, I agree.
Because I didn't even know it existed until like a couple years after it came out. So, yeah.
I think that's always going to be
animation.
I think that's always going to be the problem with Netflix is the binge process. I think when you have weekly release, it gives word of mouth a bigger chance for momentum to grow.
I also think they just have too many shows.
Netflix?
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be right.
There's just such a high volume of stuff on there that it's hard to find everything. Only the things that they make a big deal about are the things that like really take off, like their really reality shows. But some other thing is kind of going to their radar. Plus, people are scared to watch their shows because they cancel them all the time. But Arcane, I don't think got enough love. And then the last one is The Leftovers.
Damn it. Did I have that one on? No. Well, I don't. So that's good because I won't have to repeat it, but yeah.
I just feel that deserved more than what it got.
So here are my top 5 underrated TV shows. So I do have a couple of honorable mentions. So I did want to mention Severance, very similar to what you said, because not enough people were talking about it, and the themes that are present in the show, I think, are so relevant, particularly with what happened with COVID and people wanting to stay home and work, virtual work, hybrid, sort of employment. That felt like the perfect time to talk about that conversation. And I feel like because it's on Apple TV, we kind of missed that opportunity, but hopefully we'll get the season 2, the writer strike's happening, but we'll start to see. I also put Yellow Jackets as an honorary mention. You've mentioned this before, we don't have too many well-written shows about teenage girls, and the simple fact that it has the horror element. It has sort of a Lost feel where there's so much mystery surrounding what happened when they were there. Very similar to Lost, and so I always appreciate that. More fans would bring up a lot of fan theories, which I'm always a huge fan of, because the people who are watching it, they are ride or die for it. I know we have a couple of mutuals that are covering it as well. And so, yeah, people are missing a good one with that one. I'm putting Atlanta. I think people were not talking about that show enough. It was like if you had Twin Peaks written by a black person. just perfect. The writing was incredible. Their conversations on race, particularly in the last season, were some of the best that I've ever seen. I would put the writing and the social commentary from the racial perspective up there with The Wire. And I know that's high praise. I know The Wire is one of those untouchables, but I'm putting, specifically in that regard, I'm putting it up there.
I think with the caveat that he's not always good with black women.
Yes.
But yes.
No, that's fair. That's a good point. The second one, I'm putting Watchmen.
See, I thought about that, but I feel like people watch that show.
I don't think it got enough viewers that I think it should with the platform of HBO.
Okay.
In my mind, because if you wanted a perfect example as to how race can, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like enhance a concept, a story. Watchmen probably did that in the greatest way that I have ever seen on a television show.
For sure.
And I was so very much impressed. Just as simple as, oh, this superhero has something that looks like a noose on their neck. Of course he's a black man. It didn't even cross my mind. Like, yeah, he literally would have to be. You know what I mean? And so phenomenal job there. Third one, I'm putting his Dark Materials.
Oh, I'm behind.
I know. If you are in the same boat that we are in, right? If you have also sort of gone through your own sort of if you sort of gone through your own version of like deconstructing your faith and really reflecting on the trauma that has sort of happened to you or the people you care about due to just the problems of like institutionalized religion, his Dark Materials is probably one of the better ones that do it from the fantasy perspective, which is always a win when fantasy explores those things. The last one, Rami.
I knew you were going to put that there. I was like, it's either that one or it's going to be that Jack show.
Jack show?
The white rapper.
Oh,
Dave.
Jack.
I just know it's a name.
Yeah. I'm putting Rami in there because one, it is so refreshing to see Islam portrayed in such a refreshing, positive, nuanced light in terms of the things that they explore. Some of the elements that they take the time to write about, I am left just in awe of like, wow, this is why I always appreciate the work that, because I think they're involved with A24. If you wanted to, give your props to A24, you got to do it with Rami specifically because it's so good. It's so good. They did an episode on the Muslim perspective of 9/11. I think I watched that episode with you, and I was floored. I was absolutely floored because I had never considered how it was like I had never considered what it was like for them during that time period. Like you sort of hear stories here and there, but not like that. Just like simple things of like, how do we process this? Do we go the route of like survival that his dad does with like putting up the flag and stuff like that? So put that one there. So those are the ones that I thought about. I thought about Leftovers, but I'm glad you mentioned it because I don't want to seem like I was like being a Damon Lindelof shill with like just naming all of his shows. Because he's my favorite director. So we are catching up with Attack on Titan.
Well, I am.
Yeah.
Here already.
Yeah, I've watched all of it and I've read the manga, so I already know how it all ends. So it is going to be. I'm very, very excited to talk to you about what the director or the writer, chose to do with that story. But there is one particular character, Gabby, who was introduced in season 4, that who she represents clearly plays like a pretty important role in just the overall narrative of the show. And I had been thinking about how you sort of see this in television sometimes where there's like a culture that can exist when it comes to certain female characters in shows and in movies where they are immediately and unfairly written off as unlikable. They're, quote unquote, like nasty or annoying, like a nuisance. And those terms are only applied to that particular character because they provide some form of conflict to the male protagonist. right? So the few examples that I thought of was Gabby in Attack on Titan. People hated her from the jump, but as you're watching the show, you can see that she is clearly a product of propaganda. There's some internalized bias and hatred that she has about herself and her people because of what she's been taught from such a very young age. That's not something you can just ignore because you see this as just like another annoying teenage girl. Allow yourself and the literacy of the show to provide you some empathy and who the writer might be trying to critique and provide some nuance to. The second, Skylar in Breaking Bad. Immediately, everyone just sort of writes her off as just like annoying and unlikable. Her husband was selling methamphetamine to millions of people and was lying about it. Killed a bunch of people.
Millions of people?
Millions of people. He had a $1 billion corporation that he was essentially running. And in my mind, I know that Skylar was not perfect, but there were multiple moments where her actions were completely justified if you looked at it from an actual human perspective. Like, that makes no sense.
You're not supposed to root for Walter White.
Ever. Ever.
That's not what you're
Stop standing him. Stop idolizing him. He's a terrible, terrible person. And the last one, we had talked a little bit this about years ago. Sansa Stark. Oh my God. The way that people hated her unjustifiably. One, when we were first introduced to her, she was somewhat of a naive teenage girl. But even still, later on in the show, people kind of forget. Jon lost the Battle of the Bastards. He did not win that war. It was Sansa. You can critique that she should have told him about the Knights of the Vale. That's fair. But we also can't ignore that Jon was not listening to the advice that Sansa was trying to give him in that war meeting, prepping for the actual battle. She was trying to give him insight on who Ramsay was, and he just tried to completely ignore it. Even in the later seasons of season 7 and 8, obviously the writing got a little bit worse, but she was trying to warn him about Daenerys, and like, he wasn't trying to listen there. Also, she got the North free and she got the North their independence from the realm. Something that only her brother was able to do in the very first season when they announced him king in the North. And there was no tension there because when Robb did it, the realm had not accepted that. That was treason from the Lannisters. Sansa's the one that actually got it through, right? And I'm like, yo, the reason why you disliked her was because she was in conflict with Jon. Let's be real. That's the only reason. And so when I thought about all of those characters, I start just think of like other ones of like, yeah, y'all really only thought she was annoying because the narrative made her create conflict to some degree, friction, tension with the male protagonist. I'm like, man, it's just kind of corny to me.
Misogyny.
Yeah. So that was the only thing that I thought about. But I think that covers it all.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on all of our accounts. Yeah. Bye.
See you all next time. Peace.